or 2.5%, whichever is greater. And it means that the basic state pension will next April rise by £5.30 to £107.45, the largest ever cash rise in the basic state pension, and a commitment of fairness to those who have worked hard all their lives. I wanted to make sure that poorer pensioners did not see a smaller rise in their income. So I can confirm today that we will also uprate the pension credit by £5.35 and pay for this with an increase in the threshold for the savings credit. I also want to protect those who are not able to work because of their disabilities and those who, through no fault of their own, have lost jobs and are trying to find work. So I can confirm that we will uprate working age benefits in line with September's CPI inflation number of 5.2%. This will be a significant boost to the incomes of the poorest, especially when inflation is forecast to be considerably less than that by next April. We will also uprate with prices the disability elements of tax credits and increase the child element of the child tax credit by £135 in line with inflation too. But we will not uprate the other elements of the working tax credit this coming year. And given the size of the uprating this year, we will no longer go ahead with the additional £110 rise in the child element over and above inflation that was planned. By April 2012, the child tax credit will have increased by £390 since the coalition came into power. And the best way to support low-income working people is to take them out of tax altogether. And our increases in the income tax personal allowance this year and next will do that for over 1 million people. Let me turn to future public spending, Mr. Speaker. Today, I am setting expenditure totals for the 2 years following the end of the spending review period, 2015-16 and 2016-17. Total managed expenditure will fall during that period by 0.9% a year in real terms, the same rate as set out for the existing period of the spending review, with a baseline that excludes the additional investments in infrastructure also announced today. These are large savings, and we will set out in future how resources will be allocated between different areas of government. I am also announcing a measure to control spending which is not for today or next year or even for the next decade, but it directly addresses the long-term challenge Britain and so many other countries face with an ageing population. Our generation has been warned that the costs of providing decent state pensions are going to become more and more unaffordable unless we take further action. Let's not leave it to our children to take emergency action to rescue the public finances. Let's think ahead and take responsible, sensible steps now. So starting in the year 2026, we will increase the state pension age from 66 to 67, so we can go on paying a decent pension to people who are living longer. Australia, America and Germany have all taken similar steps. This will not affect anyone within 14 years of receiving their state pension today, and by saving a staggering £59 billion, it will mean a long-term future for the basic state pension. We are showing a world sceptical that democratic Western governments can take tough decisions that Britain will pay its way in the world. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is the first thing the government can do in the current environment. Keep our interest rates low and protect our country from the worst of the debt storm. But we need to make sure that those low interest rates are available to families and to businesses. It is monetary and credit policy, which is, in a debt crisis, the principal and most powerful tool for stimulating demand. Last month, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee decided to undertake further quantitative easing, and I've authorised an increase in the ceiling on their asset purchases to £275 billion. This will support demand across the economy. But we must do more to help those small businesses who can't get access to credit at an affordable price. We've already extended the last government's Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme, and we are today expanding it to include businesses with annual turnovers of up to £44 million and accrediting new lenders like Metrobank. But this scheme is by itself not nearly ambitious enough and never will be within the constraints of state aid rules. So the government is launching a major programme of credit easing to help small businesses. We have set a ceiling of £40 billion. At the same time, I've agreed with Mervyn King that we will reduce by £40 billion the asset purchase facility the previous government gave the bank to buy business loans. Only a small proportion of that facility was ever used, and I'm publishing my exchange of letters with the Governor today. So 35 new road and rail schemes that support economic development. In the North West, we will electrify the Transpennine Express between Manchester and Leeds, build the Manchester Airport and Crewe link roads, and work with Merseyside to turn the vision of the Atlantic Gateway into a reality. In Yorkshire and the Humber, there will be new stations and new tram capacity, and we will halve the tolls on the Humber Bridge. I want to pay tribute to my honourable friends, the member for Beverley and for Brigg and Goole, and indeed other local MPs who've campaigned for years to make this happen. Under this government, it has. In the North East, we're going to bring forward investment on the Tyne and Wear Metro. In the Midlands, the A45, the A43, the A453, the Kettering bypass, the M1, the M6, they're all going to be improved. And in the Southwest, the Bristol Link Road and the A380 bypass will go ahead. And for families across the Southwest facing the highest water charges in Britain, the government will cut the household bills of all Southwest water customers by £50 a year. In the east of England, we're going to make immediate improvements to the A14. In the southeast, we will build a new railway link between Oxford, Milton Keynes and Bedford that is going to create 12,000 new jobs. We're going to start working on a newer crossing of the Lower Thames, and we'll explore all the options for maintaining the UK's aviation hub status, with the exception of a third runway at Heathrow. Right here in London, we will work with the Mayor on options for other new river crossings, for example at Silvertown. We're going to support the extension of the Northern Line to Battersea. This could bring 25,000 jobs to the area. Devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland will get their Barnet share, and we're working with them to improve the links between our nations, such as the M4 in South Wales and the overnight rail services to north of the border. This all amounts, Mr. Speaker, to a huge commitment to overhauling the physical infrastructure of our nation. And we will match it by overhauling the digital infrastructure too. The government is funding plans to bring superfast broadband to 90% of homes and businesses across the country and extend mobile phone coverage to 99% of families. This will help create a living, economically vibrant countryside. But our great cities are at the heart of our regional economies, and we will help bring world-leading superfast broadband and Wi-Fi connections to 10 of them, including the capitals of all 4 nations. We're going to go ahead with the 22 enterprise zones already announced, plus 2 further zones in the Humber and Lancashire confirmed today. And I can also confirm that capital allowances of 100% will be available to encourage manufacturing and other industries into the zones in Liverpool, Sheffield, the Tees Valley, Humber and the Black Country. Those allowances will also be available to the northeastern enterprise zone. And we will consider extending to the Port of Blythe to create new private sector jobs there too. Mr. Speaker, this government's new Regional Growth Fund for England has already allocated £1.4 billion to 169 projects around the country. For every £1 we're putting in, we're attracting £6 of private sector money alongside it. I am today putting a further £1 billion over this Parliament into the Regional Growth Fund for England, with support as well for the devolved administrations. And if we don't get the private sector to take a greater share of economic activity in the regions, then our economy will become more and more unbalanced, as it did over the last 10 years. Government should not assume that this will happen by itself. We must help businesses to grow and succeed, and we can do that at a national level too, with our commitment, for example, to British science. At a time of difficult choices, we made ours last year when we committed to protect the science budget. Today we're confirming almost £500 million for scientific projects, from supercomputing and satellite technology to a world-beating animal health laboratory. And government can encourage many more of our small firms to export overseas for the first time. So we're doubling to 50,000 the number of SMEs we're helping and extending support to British mid-caps who sometimes lack the overseas ambition of their German equivalents. We will make it easier for UK-based firms to compete for government procurement contracts and make new applications out of government data. We will provide funds for smaller technology firms in Britain who find it difficult to turn their innovations into commercial success. And we've listened to the ideas from business groups about encouraging innovation in larger companies, and we will introduce a new above-the-line R&D tax credit in 2013 that will increase its visibility and generosity. And we will give, Mr. Speaker, we will give particular help to our energy-intensive industries. I have not shied away from supporting sensible steps to reduce this country's dependency on volatile oil prices and reduce our carbon emissions. I am the Chancellor who funded the first ever Green Investment Bank and introduced the carbon price floor. Our Green Deal will help people insulate their homes and cut their heating bills. But I am worried about the combined impact of the green policies adopted not just in Britain, but also by the European Union on some of our heavy energy-intensive industries. We're not going to save the planet by shutting down our steel mills and our aluminium smelters and our paper manufacturers. All we will be doing is exporting valuable jobs from this country. So we will help them with the costs of the EU trading scheme and the carbon price floor, increase their climate change levy relief, and reduce the impact of the electricity market reforms on these businesses too. This amounts to a £250 million package over the Parliament, and it will keep industry and jobs here in Britain. Mr. Speaker, it is a reminder to us all that we shouldn't price British business out of the world economy. If we burden them with endless social and environmental goals, however worthy in their own right, then not only will we not achieve those goals, but the businesses will fail, jobs will be lost, and our country will be poorer. Our planning reforms strike the right balance between protecting our countryside while permitting economic development that creates jobs. But we need to go further to remove the lengthy delays and high costs of the current system, with new time limits on applications and new responsibilities for statutory consultees. And we'll make sure that the gold plating of EU rules on things like habitats aren't placing ridiculous costs on British business. Planning laws need reform. So too do employment.
Order. The House needs to calm down. And one honourable member has probably shouted enough for one day. The Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Speaker, planning laws need reforms, and so too do employment rules. We know many firms are afraid to hire new staff because of their fear about the costs involved if it doesn't work out. We're already doubling the period before an employee can bring an unfair dismissal claim and introducing fees for tribunals. Now we will call for evidence on further reforms to make it easier to hire people, including changing the 2P regulations, reducing delay and uncertainty in the collective redundancy process, and introducing the idea of compensated no-fault dismissal for businesses with fewer than 10 employees. We will cut the burden of health and safety rules on small firms because we have a regard for the health and safety of the British economy too. And this government, Mr. Speaker, has introduced flexible working practices. We're committed to fair rights for employees. But what about the right to get a job in the first place, or the right to work all hours running a small business and not be sued out of existence by the cost of an employment tribunal? It is no good endlessly comparing ourselves with other European countries. The entire European continent is pricing itself out of the world economy. The same is true of taxes on businesses. If we tax firms out of existence or out of the country, then there won't be any tax revenues for anyone. We've set as our ambition the goal of giving this country the most competitive tax regime in the G20. Our corporate tax rate has already fallen from 28% to 26%, and I can confirm that it will fall